In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Welcome back after a lovely long break. Um, I was in Turkey for almost 3 weeks, around 19 days. I was attending a wedding of a family friend, and then I was meeting some close friends of mine, and then I was traveling to my university for a decade for the first 10-year graduation ceremony. So it was very, very busy, so I didn't have time to uh, read the book and connect with everyone online. But we did see the Çamlıca Mosque, which is the largest mosque in Istanbul, maybe also in Turkey, on a hill. It's a symbol of the current Turkish government and their connection to the religion of Islam and what they're trying to project as their contribution. We also saw um, um, Ayub Sultan Mosque, which is named after Hazrat Abu Ayub Ansari, the gentleman uh, at whose house the Prophet Muhammad tied his camel. So these few things happen, but if anybody's been to Istanbul or to other parts of Turkey, you know it's abundant with mosques and places of worship. So I was doing that, and because of that, I didn't have time to come here. Diving right back in, chapter 37 is about the moon. Surah Al Qamr is about the moon. In the arrangement of the Quran, it is right after Surah Najm, which is the star. Now, we've covered the star a few weeks ago, and now it is about the moon. So it's slightly longer than the other chapters that I cover, so I'm just going to read through it. Um, and then and then if there's something more to explore, one can do that later. But right now, it's just this is the moon, and I'll slowly unpack the details of my visit to Turkey and so forth later, if at all. But let's dive back into the Quran as quickly as possible. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. So now this talks about um, the splitting of the moon. Now this is something that people discuss. People have discussed. A very close friend of mine, who was born Muslim and then became an atheist or a non-believer, said that while the teachings of Islam are appropriate and one can find a rational foundation to a lot of them. Um, the miracles are something that he cannot wrap his head around. This is an example of one of the miracles of Prophet Muhammad splitting the moon in half and then attaching it back together as a sign of Islam. The hour has drawn near and the moon has been cleft asunder. The people of Mecca requested Prophet Muhammad to show them a miracle, so he showed them the splitting of the moon. Now that is it's in the Quran. So as far as Islam is concerned, this is the belief, this is the system, this is the discipline. Now one can always question things, one can always raise questions, but this is what Muslims believe. And in the footnote it says, narrated by Anas Raziyallahu ta'ala anhu, the people of Mecca asked the Prophet to show them a sign, a miracle. So he showed them the miracle of the cleaving of the moon. This is from Al Bukhari 64867, if you want to research it yourself. And if they see a sign, they turn away and say, this is continuous magic. So even when they ask you for proof, and you provide the proof, they still don't believe it. The believer doesn't need evidence. The disbeliever does not need evidence. It's, it's the same word, but the emphasis is different. Because the disbeliever will still continue to disbelieve until they are faced with overwhelmingly undeniable evidence, and then they might say something else. Oh, what's happening to my lighting? I don't know. Something's wrong with my lighting. Anyway, I will continue. Um, they denied the verses of God and followed their own lusts, and every matter will be settled according to the kind of deeds. Good deeds will take their doers to paradise, and similarly, evil deeds will take their doers to hell. We know this. Wow, the lighting really is destroying my face. I can't even see myself. Shall I do this now? Well, okay. The goal is to read the book and as long as I can keep reading the book, there's no problem. But I can block it like this. And indeed, there has come to them news in this Quran wherein there is enough warning to check them from evil. Yep, no disagreement there. Perfect wisdom, this Quran, but the preaching of warners benefit them not. Yep, we know all of this. This isn't news. So, O Muhammad, withdraw from them the day that the caller will call them to a terrible thing. Same advice that Muhammad has received throughout. They will come forth with humbled eyes from their graves as if they were locusts spread abroad. Hastening towards the caller, the disbelievers will say, "This is a hard day." The people of Noah, or Nuh as they say in Arabic, denied their messenger before them. They rejected our slave and said, "A madman!" And he was insolently rebuked and threatened. Then he invoked his Lord, saying, "I have been overcome, so help me." So we opened the gates of the heaven with water pouring forth. And the story of Noah is one of my favorite ones. So if you're not familiar with it, please familiarize yourself a bit more. It's a beautiful story. And we caused springs to gush forth from the earth. So the waters of the heaven and the earth met for a matter predestined. Now, something very similar has been written in the Bible, which I find to be extremely interesting. And we carried him on a ship made of planks and nails, floating under our eyes, a reward for him who had been rejected. Yes. And indeed, we have left this as a sign. Then is there any that will remember or receive admonition? Then how terrible was my torment and my warnings. And we have indeed made the Quran easy to understand and remember. Then is there any who will remember or receive admonition? So it's going to go through some examples like this. Ad people denied their Prophet Hud. Then how terrible was my torment and my warnings. Verily, we sent against them a furious wind of harsh voice on a day of evil omen and continuous calamity, plucking out men as if there were uprooted stems of date palms. Ooh, the imagery! The imagery in this one is quite interesting, quite severe. Uprooted stems of date palms. Wow. Imagery that the average Arab of the time would understand. Now, if you said dated palms, uprooted trees, people today may not understand them if they live in the West or the Northwest. Sorry, Northwestern Europe or in colder countries. But this book initially came to the people of Mecca, people of Arabia. Then how terrible was my torment and my warnings. And we have indeed made the Quran easy to understand and remember. Then is there any that will remember or receive admonition? Repeating. You see the rhythm. These are couplets of the Quran, poetry of, well, this is what happened to Noah, and this is what happened to Ad, and now maybe Thamud and others will come forth after that. Exactly as you say. Thamud, people also denied the warnings. And they said, "A man alone among us, shall we follow him? Truly, then we should be in error and distress or madness. Is it that the reminder is sent to him, who was Prophet Saleh, alone from among us? Nay, he is an insolent liar. Tomorrow they will come to know who is the liar, the insolent one." Again, another example. So there was Noah, then there was the people of Ad, now the people of Thamud. Verily, we are sending the she camel as a test for them. So watch them, O Saleh, and be patient. We've discussed this briefly before. And inform them that the water is to be shared between her and them, each one's right to drink being established by turns. They called their comrade, and he took a sword and killed her. Then how terrible was my torment and warnings. Verily, we sent against them a single sayha, which means torment, an awful cry. And they became like the stubble of a fold builder. And indeed, we have made the Quran easy to understand and remember. Then is there any that will remember or receive admonition? Couplets happening again and again. This is poetry. This is God's poetry, and it when you read it in Arabic, more so than English, it starts burrowing in your mind, and it starts becoming a reality where you start saying, Oh my Lord, this is what happened. This is the rhythm. This is the lyric. This is why it's written in this manner. This is why it's poetry. Um, the people of Lot or Lut denied the warnings. Verily, we sent against them a violent storm of stones, which destroyed them all, except the family of Lot. Them we saved in the last hour of the night. As a favor from us, thus do we reward him who gives thanks by obeying us. And he, Lot, indeed had warned them of our seizure or punishment, but they did doubt the warnings, and they indeed sought to shame his guests by asking to commit sodomy with them. Now, this is a whole other story about the people of Lot. We will come to that in another chapter. So we blinded their eyes, saying, Then taste you my torment and my warnings. Again and again with these warnings and torment, and verily, in abiding torment, seize them early in the morning. Then taste you my torment and my warnings. And indeed, we have made the Quran easy to understand and remember. Then is there any that will remember or receive admonition? It's the same. And indeed, warnings came to the people of Pharaoh, which is the Pharaoh, through Moses and Aaron. They denied all our signs, so we seized them with a seizure of the Almighty, all capable, omnipotent. Are you disbelievers? This is to the people of Mecca, O Quraysh, better than these nations of Noah, Lot, Saleh, and the people of Pharaoh who were destroyed, or have you an immunity against our torment in the divine scriptures? This is a big chapter. This is direct invocation, direct call to action, referencing to previous examples of people who have existed but suffered because they didn't follow the the will of the divine, and now calling them and saying, so you think you have something special? Well, no, you don't. Or say they, we are a great multitude victorious. Now, the next one and the verse after were not revealed in Mecca. They were revealed later after the Battle of Badr. But in the arrangement, they were put here because they are also falling in line with the narrative. So because I'm not doing verse by verse, I'm doing chapter by chapter, I will read them in stride. But beware that 44 to 46 were revealed in Medina and then brought to Mecca. Or say they, we are a great multitude victorious? The multitude will be put to flight, and they will show their backs. Nay, but the hour is their appointed time for their full recompense, and the hour will be more grievous and more bitter. These three are from Medina. Verily, the polytheists, disbelievers, sinners, criminals are in error in this world, and will burn in the hellfire in the hereafter. The day they will be dragged on their faces into the fire, it will be said to them, Taste you the touch of hell. Verily, we have created all things with qadr. Qadr means divine preordainments of all things before their creation, as written in the book of decrees, Allah al-Mahfuz. It has a kismet, it has a destiny. And our commandment is but one as the twinkling of an eye. And indeed, we have destroyed your likes. Then is there any that will remember or receive admonition? And everything they have done is noted in the records of deeds. And everything small and big is written down in Allah al-Mahfuz already beforehand, before it befalls or is done by its doer. Now this is explained in the Quran in many sections. Verily the muttaqun, which means the pious people, will be in the midst of gardens and rivers in paradise, in a seat of truth, which is paradise, near the omnipotent King, God the One, the All-Blessed, the Most High, the owner of majesty and honor. That's the chapter. I rushed through this chapter because it's a heavy one. It's not a light chapter. It's quite heavy. There's a lot being said here, but at the same time, there's a lot of repetition. It's saying the same thing again and again. They're giving different examples. The example of Noah, then the example of the people of Ad, then the people of Thamud, then the people of Lot, and then the people of Moses. Pharaoh and Moses and that whole story. And then using these 5 examples to indicate to the people of Mecca or the people of the Prophet Muhammad was engaging with. That look at all these examples, look at all this we have done. Do you think you're going to be anything special? That's the basic crux of this story uh, in this chapter. It's There's much more one can do by diving deeper. Um, Certain verses, particularly the one about miracles. Now, I advocate that even though miracles are an important part of religion, um, they have no bearing of how I believe in God or how I feel about religion. Um, I'd love to know what other people think. One of my closest friends stepped away from the religion because he was he wasn't convinced by the miracles, and I would say to him, well, do away with them. Why do they have any bearing on what you believe? They don't need to. You could simply believe what you believe. Um, but he wasn't convinced. Um, I don't. I don't let miracles decide how I feel about God, is because the whole argument is untouched by them. The whole argument of Islam or of Christianity or Hinduism or all religions at the crux is to be good to the other person, to treat others as you would like to be treated yourself, and to think beyond one's own self, which means, and by one's own self, I mean not only personally but also contextually. So beyond your current space and current temporal context, think beyond those times. So you look to the future, and in the future, um, you'll say, okay, how are my deeds going to be reflected 10 years from now? Will they affect my children? Will they affect my family, my friends, people I associate with? If there is an afterlife, how will I be measured or compensated for my actions? That is the crux of all religion. It's about trying to make the human being better, controlled, civilized, channeled, purposeful. Um, that message is still the same, regardless of miracles. Whether Jesus could cure the sick, or Prophet Muhammad split the moon in half, or Moses parted the Red Sea, it doesn't have any bearing on what the message is. Now the religious folk might say, "Oh, you're downplaying religion." I'm not. I'm saying those things are valid, absolutely. But if someone is not convinced, for those people, you can simply make the argument that even without those miracles, the message is still as valuable. Be a good person and be mindful of things beyond your own spatio-temporal, socioeconomic, and political context. That's it. That's the center of all religion, isn't it? But I'm going to stop on this right now because I've just come back from Turkey and I'm recovering, as you can see. On Monday we'll start lessons from my mother again, and I'll see you again next Friday for chapter 38.